I still remember the exact moment she said it. Not because of the words, but because of how calm she sounded. "I think I want a divorce," she said, stirring her coffee like she was discussing weekend plans. It was a Tuesday morning. The kind of ordinary day that shouldn't have carried any weight. But those words split my world clean in half. I just sat there, halfway through tying my tie, staring at her. "What?" "I'm not happy, Daniel. I haven't been for a long time." Her tone was clinical. Like she'd rehearsed this in her head 100 times and now she was just performing it. We'd been married 8 years. We had our share of ups and downs, but nothing that felt like divorce territory. I remember laughing bitterly, thinking this had to be some kind of emotional test, another one of her "let's talk about our feelings" moments. But she wasn't looking for conversation. She was already checked out. For days I walked around like a ghost. She slept in the guest room. We still had breakfast together, exchanged polite words, and pretended not to notice the growing silence between us. It was hell disguised as civility. Then came the twist of the knife. A week after her announcement, she sat down beside me on the couch, the first time she'd done that in days, and said, "I still care about you, Daniel. I just think we'd be better as friends." I remember my jaw tightening. Friends. That word hit harder than divorce. "You want to be friends with your husband?" I said, trying not to explode. She nodded, eyes soft. "I don't want to lose you completely. We've shared so much. I just need space to figure myself out." Faith. Friendship. All those soft, sanitized words people use when they're already halfway into someone else's bed. The signs had been there. I just didn't want to see them. The late-night texts she claimed were work-related. The sudden obsession with going to the gym after years of avoiding it. The constant smiles at her phone, followed by quick lock screens when I walked in. Her space wasn't solitude, it was someone else. But I didn't confront her right away. I wanted truth, not suspicion. So I did what any broken, desperate man does when he's hanging by a thread. I became quiet, observant, calculating. 3 nights later, she said she was meeting her friend Melissa for drinks. I nodded, pretending to believe her. I watched her drive off from the window, her perfume lingering in the living room like a cruel joke. An hour later I followed. Melissa lived across town. My wife, however, didn't take that turn. She drove toward the downtown district, the place she'd said she hated because of the crowds and parking. I followed from a few cars back until she pulled into a hotel parking lot. Not a restaurant, not a bar. Hotel. My hands went cold on the steering wheel. For several minutes I just sat there, watching her sit in her car, checking her phone. Then a man appeared, tall, maybe mid-30s, athletic, in a black jacket. He leaned down to her window, smiled, and she smiled back, that same smile she used to save for me. Then she got out, and he kissed her like he'd been doing it for months. I felt my stomach drop. Every piece of denial I'd built crumbled right there in that parking lot. She wasn't finding herself. She'd already found someone else. I didn't confront her that night. I went home, sat in the dark, and waited. My mind raced between heartbreak and rage, between wanting to destroy everything and wanting to vanish. When she came home, around midnight, she smelled faintly of his cologne. I could tell because it wasn't the one I wore. "Hey," she said softly, almost tenderly. "You're still up?" "Yeah," I replied, keeping my voice level. "How was Melissa?" She hesitated just for a second. "Good. Talk." "She's been struggling with her breakup." He nodded. "Glad to hear it." She went to bed, unaware that her lies were already hanging by a thread. The next day I did what I do best. I planned. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to show her what boundaries really meant. I gathered proof, texts, hotel receipts from our joint account, screenshots from a phone backup she forgot was synced to our iCloud. Her lover's name was Jason, her coworker. Married. 2 kids. It all clicked. The gym, the work dinners, the emotional distance. And yet, the worst part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was how normal she made it all seem. How she looked me in the eyes and said, "We can still be friends." Friends? Well, that wasn't friendship. That was her wanting the comfort of my loyalty while enjoying the thrill of someone else's touch. That night I set my plan in motion. When she came home, I told her I wanted to talk. Really talk. And her eyes lit up, as if maybe this was the moment I'd finally agreed to her peaceful divorce. We sat across from each other at the dining table. She wore that familiar gray sweater I'd bought her 2 birthdays ago. It made her look almost innocent. "Before we file," I began, "I just need clarity." "Why him?" Her lips parted slightly. "Daniel, just answer," I said calmly. "Why him?" She looked down at her hands. "I don't know. Just happened. We connected. You were so busy with work, and I felt invisible." Invisible. The irony almost made me laugh. "So instead of talking to me, you talked to him?" Tears welled in her eyes. "It wasn't supposed to go this far." "Far enough for hotels," I said, sliding my phone across the table. On the screen, photos, screenshots, timestamps. Her face went pale. She didn't speak for a full minute. Just silent, trembling breaths. Finally she whispered, "You followed me?" "I followed my wife," I corrected. "To see who she'd become." She started crying, not out of guilt but fear. Fear of losing the safety net she thought I'd always be. "I'll end it," she said suddenly. "I swear. I'll end it, Daniel. We can work on this." But I shook my head. "You ended us the moment you lied. I'm not here for apologies." "Then what do you want?" she asked through tears. Leaned back. "Boundaries." Her brow furrowed. "You want to be friends." "Fine," I said. "Friends don't live together. Friends don't share finances. Friends don't depend on each other emotionally. You'll move out by the weekend. I'll contact a lawyer tomorrow. And if you ever reach out to me after this, keep it about the paperwork." Her expression twisted. Part shock, part regret. "Daniel, please. I don't want to lose you completely." "You already did," I said quietly. "You just didn't notice when it happened." The next morning, I froze our joint account and had my lawyer draft the divorce petition. I sent her a copy along with a simple note. "You wanted friendship. I wanted loyalty. We both got what we deserved." She called dozens of times. Left voicemails about how she'd made a mistake, how she'd cut things off with Jason, how she wanted to start over. I never answered. Instead, I focused on rebuilding the life I'd let revolve around her. I joined a gym, not out of bitterness, but because I realized how much of myself I'd neglected trying to keep someone else happy. I reconnected with friends I'd drifted from. I even started volunteering on weekends, anything to remind myself that life didn't end with her betrayal. 3 months later, she showed up at my office. I almost didn't recognize her. Thinner, eyes sunken, hair unkempt. "Daniel," she said softly when my assistant let her in. "Can we talk?" "Decide." "About what?" "Sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know that I raised a hand. Stop. You made your choice. You don't need to explain it anymore. I thought I could handle being without you," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "But I can't." I stared at her for a long time. The woman I once loved was now a stranger. Fragile, lost, desperate. But pity isn't love. And forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation. "I wish you peace, Emily," I said finally. "But we can't be friends. We were never built for that." When she left, I stood by the window, watching her walk away, the same way I once watched her walk toward another man. This time, though, there was no anger, just acceptance. Because boundaries aren't about punishment. They're about self-respect. She wanted friendship after betrayal. I wanted closure after pain. In the end, I gave us both what we needed, the freedom to live with the consequences of our choices. Months later, I got a letter from her. No return address, just handwriting I'd know anywhere. "I understand now what you meant by boundaries. I thought love was about forgiveness, but I see it's also about respect. I hope you're doing better. I'm trying to. I folded the letter, placed it in a drawer, and never opened it again. Because sometimes the greatest act of love isn't holding on. It's walking away with your dignity intact. And that's what I did. She wanted a divorce and friendship. I gave her boundaries and peace for both of us.